Welcome to Orange County Power Players, where we spotlight the personal, professional, and financial success stories of OC's top leaders. Here's your host, Danny Flores.
Welcome back to OC Power Players, where I interview some of the most successful people in Orange County. I'm Danny Flores, your host, and today's honored guest is Kelly Oberle, zooming in from Yorba Linda. Kelly works with both corporate and athletic organizations to help build resilience, increase emotional intelligence, and enhance performance for teams, individuals, coaches, and administrators. With a strategic focus on positive psychology, breathwork, and mindfulness, the goal is to help create an environment that allows individuals and teams to perform at their highest potential. She grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, playing softball, later playing Division I softball while earning her bachelor's in organizational studies from Northwestern University. After moving to California, Kelly gained extensive experience in sales and marketing management for high-tech companies. Realizing that stress had affected her both personally and professionally, she spent time learning breathwork, mindfulness, and stress management tools. Trying to balance her personal and professional worlds while raising 3 children has been quite challenging. She has found that learning new techniques to improve self-regulation has helped her become more successful and healthier in both her income and in both her home and work life. Through her experience working with corporations and coaching softball and athletics, she started to realize that the techniques she had learned to improve her own handling of stress could be taught to others. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Danny. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited.
Yes, excited to have you. So tell us a little bit about how you came up in the training that you were given as an athlete that has helped you continue on.
Yeah, so I think, one of the things that I've discovered over the last few years, kind of looking back, is, when you're trained as an athlete or any kind of discipline, whether it's you're a part of a group, that there's an outcome that's associated with it. There's a drive that happens for you. So for me, I think I sometimes, if I look back, I got caught more up in the outcome, and I didn't really have tools to understand how important the process was. Mm-hmm. So as an athlete, you get really focused on outcome versus process. And so part of my journey is learning how to enjoy the process and not worry so much about the outcome, if that makes sense.
And how has that helped in your profession now, the corporate profession?
Yeah, so I think, from a drive standpoint, it helped me be driven to, excel in my career and to learn new things and not really get, if I didn't understand something, I put the time in to learn it. And so, it drove me pretty hard in the early part of my career, which is where I got to where I am now, which is a little bit of burnout, a little bit of realizing that I was chasing something that maybe wasn't what I really wanted. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes, again, you get caught on what you can do versus what you want to do. And so that's what I'm learning and hopefully teaching others.
Yes. So here's the magic question. What do you want to do?
That is, it's interesting because I think if you would have asked me this 10 years ago, I would have wanted to continue to kind of climb the corporate ladder. Mm-hmm. What I want to do now is kind of what I'm doing. I get a good mix of working with corporate leaders and business leaders around building high-performing teams. So I get to kind of work that muscle of my brain of working in corporate and still being a part of kind of the hustle and bustle of that. But I also get to work with athletes, so high school, college athletes, some actually adult athletes, in trying to help with mindset and confidence and just emotional regulation so that we can, like me included, can kind of show up our best. And so I feel like I'm finally at a place where I'm giving back more in my career. So that's kind of what I want to do. I don't know if that's very clear.
No. That's but look at it. Let's take one step back.
Sure.
If you're working with corporate and building high performance teams, you're working in the high schools or colleges, like you even said, even adult athletes. So you're trying to build a high performance individual or team together, and it's about mindset. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that, because that almost is a commonality between everything, right? Between anybody who wants to be a high performance team, and high performance potentially defined as just being able to perform better than everybody else. Is that correct?
Yeah, so actually, it's in some cases, yes, it's more performing to your potential
Mm-hmm.
because, I think sometimes we stop before we get to our potential. And so, we'll like when I talk with athletes, your potential may be that you're going to be a Division I athlete and you're going to go pro. Another person, their potential may be that they're just going to have an amazing high school experience. In corporate, your potential may be that you want to be an individual contributor and have a big balance. So high performing is really performing to your potential, and when you kind of said those parallels, it's really accurate. When we show up, it's about our mindset, our confidence. It's about believing that we're going to give our best effort, and that's what we
Mm-hmm.
try to teach. And so if you're trying to hit your sales goals, there's a mindset around that. There's a confidence
Mm-hmm.
around that.
Mm-hmm.
There's different things that go into that. Just like if you're, I work with a cheer team and they're trying to hit their stunts,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain amount of confidence and collaboration that they need to do. And so the parallels are pretty amazing. It took me a while to figure that out. I kind of
Right,
had both
right.
lives separate. And
Yeah,
so,
because you have to have that certain mindset, that focus, that drive. Now, you said something that's very interesting. You said a lot of people stop before they hit their potential. Now, if you look at it, and so here's an analogy, right? It's January 1st. People create these goals. We're gonna go to the gym. We're gonna get in shape. They join the gym. They go full blast for 3 weeks, and then they peter out,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Now, here's the thing that, and correct me if I'm wrong, doing that is doing it consistently without seeing any results, because you can get up in the morning and you say, I'm going to the gym today, I'm going to do this massive workout. You're there for 2 hours, you're all sweaty, you put everything into it, and you come back at the end of your workout and you look at yourself, you're going to look exactly the same, like no change.
Yeah.
You do that for a week, still no change. You do that for a month, maybe, right? But not significant enough to motivate you. You have to literally go long, 6 months, a year, a couple years, and then you start noticing these changes in your body, and you say, okay, I can keep doing this. But the thing is that you have to do it in the beginning when nothing's happening. You got to change your diet and nothing happens. And then little by little, I would think that as you are building a team at work and you're trying to organize yourself, and you're not going to see changes right away and results right away. And that could be even in a sport where you're practicing, whether you're a pitcher or you're a quarterback, or whatever position you're playing, it's like repetition over and over and over to get good. And we can use, say, Kobe Bryant as an example. He was the first one in the gym. He was the last one. What did they say? He practiced 1,000 shots a day
Yeah.
to be able to get that high percentage. He didn't make every shot, but he made more than everybody else because he did more than everybody else.
Yeah, and I think, you kind of hit on kind of three areas that are universal. So first, it's kind of the start. Like they say, the start is what stops us. So
Mm-hmm.
like, this getting started is one of the hardest things that we face. Once you get started, then it's, progress is never linear. And so this is a big thing. And you see it in, like, so if you use a corporate team, when you're building that team, you're not always going to see the progress. You're not going to see like everything, it's kind of like the sales adage. It takes a lot of no's to get to a yes, right? So
Correct.
that's the same way as if you set a goal of, I want to get in better shape, or I want to, hit a certain number in like my mile time, or whatever those things are.
Right.
There are going to be days where it feels great, and there's going to be days where it doesn't. And so when we set goals are awesome, but habits are what kind of make the difference. And so to your point, it's consistency. And so one of the things that work with and try to teach at a younger age, because I wish I would have been more consistent in a lot of things I did, is like, how do you build those consistent habits? How do you build those things so that, because motivation is great in the beginning, but motivation won't take you all the way through. So motivation is, when the crowd's behind you, everyone is motivated, but it's those days where you wake up and you're like, nah, I'd rather just hit the alarm and scoot over.
Stay in. Yeah, right. I hear you, right? It's not easy
Yeah.
to get up.
Yeah.
I can see how the motivation, the raw gets you pumped up. But I think is potentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, is developing the tools,
Yep.
right? Just
Yeah.
and it could, if you try to massively change your life or your habits, you're going to fail.
Yep.
I think it has to be one at a time. And you consistently work on one little one, whether it's like, I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning from now on. But in order to get up at 5 in the morning, I actually have to go to bed a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
That maybe less Netflix time, or less social media time, or less whatever time. You're going to have to give something up because you need it to be easier for you to get up at 5, and you need your sleep. If you don't sleep early, then you're going to struggle. So why struggle? So start changing, and you probably have to work on it just a little bit at a time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things is that when you try to change everything, change is kind of force or fear. Right.
Yeah.
So you're like afraid of something, or you're kind of forced to. So people make a lot of health changes because they have health issues, and so they have to. But most change needs to be subtle. And I think with organizations, we see it a lot, is how do you make subtle changes? So if I'm a new leader and I come in and I start making a bunch of changes, everyone freaks out,
They're gonna
right?
fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you lose a group of them. But if you can key on something that is going to be a difference maker, or even like when we do training with athletes, like I try to look at what is one of the things that will impact them the most. So maybe it is confidence building, or maybe it is routine setting. Because if we can see some progress, to your point, it keeps us going, even if it's a little progress. And so that's kind of, I think we're all the same in that respect. There is a subset of people who are super disciplined. It's just how they were born. And but most of this is a skill that can be developed, and you may not have Kobe Bryant's work ethic, but you can build some habits and milestones that can help you get, a little bit better at that.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. You said some people are born with it. Are they born with it? Do they just lean to developing that skill? And he also mentioned Kobe Bryant's work ethic. What got him there?
And I think that's the great debate, right?
Right.
Is there there's a genetic component to height and to, strength a little bit, right? But then there's this.
That's natural, right? That
Yeah.
your athletic build, whether you're 6 feet tall or 6'7", or whether you're strong and you have a strong skeletal structure, That's you're born with that, right?
Yeah.
But being able to put that ball through the basket, that's skill,
Yeah. And I think, there's some natural,
right?
like, yeah, because I've like through my kids, but even before that, I've coached kids of all different ages.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are kids that they're young and they're very coordinated. And so they have kind
Mm-hmm.
of a baseline that, and
Right.
then there are other kids that aren't so coordinated, but over time they build that coordination, they build that
Right.
skill. And I think from a mental standpoint and kind of a neurological standpoint, there are people who maybe are wired a little bit more towards discipline
Discipline.
or
Yeah.
but it's a skill and you could, I remember playing in college with some people and throughout my career of playing travel ball and things like that, where there were people who had some, they just were very skilled. And maybe they didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
same work ethic. So at some point they capped. And other people, like I don't feel like I had the same skills that some people, so I had to work really hard
Right.
to get
But see
better.
that sometimes I've heard that sometimes
Yeah.
let's just say somebody who's very naturally skilled and somebody who's just hungry.
Mhm.
That hungry person can actually outperform the skilled person
Yeah.
because the skilled person can sometimes just cruise.
Yeah.
Now, if they had the same work ethic as the other person, then they can excel like far beyond the
Yeah.
wildest dreams, right?
Yeah. It's
Oh,
that, good is the enemy of great, right? Or
right?
early success. Like, we'll see kids sometimes that have had a lot of early success and they kind of a
They
little bit
cruise.
rest on their laurels or
Yeah.
feel like it's just going to keep coming easy. And every
No.
level takes a different kind of work ethic. And it's the same in organizations, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so, it's not that you always have to be going 1,000%, but you have to respect like the work that it takes to get to each level.
Right. Because now let's use as an example. Kids and as they progress from say grade school, let's say in a sport to high school, that's a different level. They're hitting
Mhm.
a different level now
Yeah.
because you're bringing in the teams in high school are not bringing in all the kids like in the younger years. They're bringing in the better group of kids that kind of will be playing on will play more constantly. And then and then maybe you think you're really good, but then you get into the college level, and now you're talking about a whole different group of kids now.
Yeah.
They're much more, it's like the cream of the crop in a sense at
Yeah.
that
It's like a
level,
funnel.
right? So it makes it
Yeah.
more challenging for them. And I think that's where the potential discipline starts kicking in. And do I need to work extra time to perfect my skill a little bit better? Now look at wasn't it Michael Jordan that was sat out in high school for 1 year because what was it, his attitude or something like that, and it was just
Yeah. It was more, I mean, I think because I lived in Chicago at the tail end with Michael Jordan and
uh-huh,
amazing. He's an amazing athlete, but I
yes,
think
yes,
in his freshman year he didn't make the team,
right,
and part of it was skill and part of it was height. Like he grew a lot over the summer,
yeah,
but he had goals, and I think what's kind of important about this piece that you bring up is there still needs to be a lot of joy around what you do.
oh
And
yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah,
and I think that's where one of the things that some of the programs that I'm trying to do is that you can work hard and you can have goals, but you have to also enjoy the process. And if you
mm-hmm,
get so stuck on the outcome, it can kind of ruin the process.
mm-hmm,
So that's one of the things with like teams and individuals that are really high performing. If and I think we're seeing that on the athletic side, we're seeing it where people are getting burnt out, high profile people that are struggling with the grind of it all because the
mm-hmm.
joy has kind of been lost. And so it's finding that balance of having fun when you can, also knowing that there are going to be parts of it that aren't that fun, but that's kind of life. And I think, a Michael Jordan or even a Kobe Bryant, those their joy came from the work that they put in. Also,
Right. Because
so
you can't. So correct me if I'm wrong. You can't work that hard and not enjoy it. Is that kind of true?
you can, but it's gonna catch up with you. And I think that's where those pressures are. Like, I mean, think about some of the things you've done that you haven't enjoyed, but you've had to do it to,
Like a stepping stone to get to the next
yeah,
level. But okay,
yeah,
let's use another example. Michael Phelps. Michael
yeah.
Phelps said,
You're
"I
using all the
train."
big ones.
Right, but these are the ones that have that mindset, right? Michael Phelps said, "I work out twice a day, every day." And then I remember a conversation. He says, "Let me be clear, every day,
Yeah.
birthdays, Christmas, New Year's,
Sick.
I don't take a day off,
Yeah.
right? Twice a day,
Yep.
not once. Everybody else trained once a day. He trained twice a day because his tunnel vision focus was to get that gold medal, and he did. He did multiple times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So but he had to have enjoyed that to a point where he worked to the extreme. Like that was his focus. I'm going to
Yeah.
do this.
And I think, he's come out and talked about some different things around mental health and his drive. And it was interesting. He also talked about how he had been in the water more than he had walked, like on land, which is like
Right.
wild to think about. But yeah, his whole, like, what he was driven by, there was an enjoyment in it. I think
Mhm.
where the danger comes in is when you're done, if you just identify that way, like,
Yes.
part of
That
the part of the discussion that I have with a lot of my, like, individual clients are, where your identity is. And like, your identity could be as a businessman, or as
mhm.
a basketball player, or as, a parent, or
Yeah.
but all of those things are part of who you are. And so that's where, like, to your point, you can really enjoy it, but if it becomes all of your identity, that's when it gets a little tricky.
Yeah. Now that's something interesting that you brought up. What happens after, right? After retirement. And this just doesn't apply to athletes. This
No.
is like for everybody,
Yeah.
right? And your job as you retire, because I heard, many different stories, right? Some people retire and then they end up passing away because maybe that was it. That was it for their lives. They didn't know what to do after. Or people retire and then they go back to work. They get a little part-time job just to keep themselves busy because they can't be home all day. So there's a transition there from being you as
Yeah.
retirement age is probably older, but you can be a younger person, an athlete that retires out as well. And that's been your whole life. Like, how do you make the transition from one to the other? And I've seen and I know some that have done well. They open up businesses and they do stuff and they keep their minds working. So perhaps maybe the transition is just to not let your mind rest completely, but maybe you need some type of a challenge. It doesn't have to be to the extreme anymore, but something to keep you busy.
Yeah, and it's interesting because identity is, we all have our identities. And I remember when I left my corporate job, it was right before, like, when I decided, I left right before COVID, and I didn't know COVID was coming. So
Neither did I.
yeah, so I had some different plans, but it ended up being, I did want to be able to be with my kids a little bit more and have some
Right.
flexibility, but I had to change some strategies.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but I remember that first month, and probably longer than that, of, like, feeling like, okay, who was I? Like, even though my job didn't completely define me, but it was like I had a place to go. I felt like I was contributing to society. And on
Mm-hmm.
this other end, I was trying to build. So it was how my identity was wired
Right.
over all the years, and not accurate, but just that's how it was wired. And I think one of the things that I see kind of in, because I work with all these different ages, is, you can, when you graduate high school, there's a transition period. When you go into, like, you're an athlete and you're leaving that sport, there can be an identity. When you're in corporate, or a lot of first responders struggle with this, where,
Mm-hmm.
when they leave, it's such a different way in society.
Oh, yeah.
And so one of the things that we kind of talk about is, if your whole identity is kind of tied up in what you're doing, whether it's being an athlete or being, a CEO, or being a podcast host, right? Like, we
Right.
can all have like our identities.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to slowly find things like a hobby, or like we'll talk to, like, I've got a couple of athletes that I've talked to about getting like a pet, like getting something that helps you care about something besides just your training and just those things.
Right. Right.
So I think that is, as a society, there is a lot identify. I mean, it's even like, I've raised my kids. I've been people can identify as like, I'm a stay-at-home parent who's raised my kids. They graduate, they go out, empty nest. Now what do we do?
Right. It's like, darn, life has
Yeah.
changed and I'm lost. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think, it's natural. It's not something to feel like you're on your own on, but it is things that you can develop some perspective, so that those transitions become, those next chapters become something that's enjoyable, as opposed to just looking back on what you had.
And there's probably nothing wrong with just taking a step back and just enjoying the time and kind of figuring out how to reinvent yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And, some people are fortunate and they can reinvent themselves and they don't have to worry financially or anything like that. Some people, go through transitions and they do have to still work, and so then that adds a different type of burden to them.
Right.
Some people have been trained a certain way. Like, so you see this with professional athletes, where they've been trained one way, and now all of a sudden they don't see themselves as employable, or they're not sure where to go next. And so I think those are all transitions that that we don't, like, sometimes don't want to think about, but there's things that you can do, and conversations you can have, and goals and habits you can create to make those transitions a little bit easier.
Right. So tell us a little bit more about how you work with the high school kids and younger athletes, and guidance, and guiding them in the direction that they may potentially want to take.
Yeah, so I do kind of two things. I try to work with teams. So, when I engage with a team, we do kind of a pre-evaluation to understand where they're at with confidence and performance anxiety and goals, and all the things that kind of teamwork, how they're coached, how their parents kind of influence them, how their teammates do. And so then we tried, depending on the teams, we can do like a workshop, but most of the time we try to do, a few sessions with the teams to work on the areas that they're struggling with the most. So a lot of times it's around confidence, it's around performing in situations, like big situations. It's, trying to just enjoy the process.
Right.
So then I also work with individual athletes where they may be struggling with, with a certain aspect of the sport, or they may be trying to build their confidence, or they may struggle a little with performance anxiety, because we all, not we all, but a majority, like if you're doing a presentation, there's a little bit of anxiety, and
Oh yeah, a little bit or a lot, right? Before.
yeah. So, and I have a background not only in emotional intelligence from just working on things around self-awareness and self-regulation, but then also I've done a lot with breath work and things around, we can tell people to calm down, but we really have to give them tools to do that, and resets and things that allow them to kind of be where their feet are at. And I think, especially with student athletes, they're a son or daughter, they're a athlete, they're also a student, they're a friend.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, right? So they've got a lot of roles, and we try to help them, be present where they're at. So
How does breath work help? Let's just say, as an example, an athlete before a game or somebody before a presentation, to calm those nerves down and then be able to bring your peak performance forward.
yeah, so there's different types, but like when you're talking about like, typical anxiety, not anxiety, but like where you get a little bit like your adrenaline gets pumping, right? So
Hmm.
you might, like for you, do you ever feel like your heart rate goes up a little bit? You kind of get a little bit tense.
Hmm.
You might feel a little queasy, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You might
yeah,
get a little sweaty palms, things like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
That's all kind of your central nervous system kicking in, and we call it fight or flight. And I think
Hmm.
that's been a pretty popular thing lately,
Right.
like where you have your nervous system and you have kind of rest or digest or fight or flight. And so
Hmm.
with breath work and then also grounding techniques. So like you had mentioned Michael Phelps before, like
Hmm.
when he gets up on the before the starting block,
Hmm.
he'll cross his arms, like he'll slap his back. That is actually kind of a form of a grounding technique to get himself in his body. I don't know if he does it that way or it's just become a routine. But
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
breath work, what it does is that it is a natural way to kind of calm your nervous system and get you back into kind of your body.
Hmm.
So if your heart rate is really high, your out breath, your exhale is really important. We want it longer. So if you're getting ready to do a speech,
Hmm.
just taking a couple of moments to make sure you inhale through your nose and you feel your diaphragm expand, and then you do a nice long exhale out. We call it kind of conscious breathing. That's a really
Hmm.
simple tool. There's been a lot of um, research and a lot of information around a thing called the physiological sigh. So I use that with a lot of athletes,
Hmm.
and I think the studies were done in Stanford, but basically a physiological sigh, you take a inhale in through your nose, feeling your diaphragm expand. You take a second inhale in, and then you take a long exhale out with a little bit of a sigh. And that's been kind of shown if you can do that 2 to 3 times to kind of calm your nervous system down.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how we use it. It really allows you just to be in the present, but there's actually a physiological component to it. So if you've ever held a baby when they're crying,
Yeah.
like did
Oh,
they
yeah.
cry and then they do that little,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
like your
yeah.
natural, you do it when you sleep. It's kind of your natural response to stress.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I have four boys, so I've held babies. Yeah, they're older
Yeah,
now, but
you've held a few baby. Yeah,
yeah.
I have three and I have twins, so
Oh, yeah. So you've done
there's a
it.
lot of sighing by us going on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, for sure, for sure. Fun
So,
times. Well, Callie, we as we wrap up the interview, what do the next 6 to 12 months look like for you? What's exciting in the horizon?
um, I'm continuing to try to expand working with high school and college athletes. So I've been doing a fair amount of that. I also I didn't mention this, but I do I'm an adjunct at Santa Ana College, so I
Hmm.
teach leadership and business communications classes. So that was one of my goals when I left corporate, was
Hmm.
to be able to teach. And again, COVID kind of delayed that process.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
But it's just to continue to work with, individuals and organizations that are trying to figure out ways to keep people engaged and enjoy what they're doing, building like trust and accountability. And all of those things have to do with how we communicate and how we show up individually as much as how we show up as a team. So I'm just, trying to continue to build what I, set out to do when I left. And I feel very fortunate to be able to kind of work in both worlds.
Amazing. Well, Kelly, if there's somebody that's listening and would love to get a hold of you, potentially for help in some type of coaching or whatever else, well, how can they get a hold of you?
So you can, my website is accesshumanpotential.com. You can also reach me via my email, which is my first letter and then Oberle at accesshumanpotential.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram, so all of those.
Everywhere. Amazing. Very good. Well, Kelly, once again, thanks so much for coming on. And to our audience, please go to ocpowerplayers.com and follow us on your favorite channel.
Thank you, Danny. I really enjoyed this. I really appreciate being on.
No, absolutely. Thanks for coming on.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Orange County Power Players. Want to share your success story? Apply to be a guest at ocpowerplayers.com/guest.